Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Portsmouth City Council's Cabinet. I'm Councillor Steve Pitt, the leader of the City Council, and I will be the chair of this meeting. Bit of housekeeping before we get started. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room in the public gallery via the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble in the turning circle at the end of King Henry Street, past the University's Park building, because there is a giant ice rink where we would normally gather. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be recorded and broadcast on the website. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those explicitly stating they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. We have all read reports, so officers will be only highlighting anything that may have changed since publication or any specific points that they wish to draw our attention to. We'll begin with introductions. I've said who I am, and I'll now move to my immediate left.
Peter Bowles, City Solicitor.
Natalie Brahma-Pearl, Chief Executive.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Chris Ward, Director of Finance and Resources.
Councillor Hugh Mason, Planning Policy and City Development.
Peter Candlish, Cabinet Member for Transport.
So I'm Councillor Lee Hunt, and I look after the portfolio of services for community safety, sport and open spaces. I also happen to be one of the councillors for Buckland, Stamshaw, Tipner and North End, otherwise known as Nelson Ward.
Good afternoon. Chris Atwell, Cabinet Member for Central Services.
Dave Ashmore, I help look after Environmental Services.
Kimberly Barrett, I'm Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Greening the City.
Kelly Nash from Strategy Unit.
Claire Looney, Commissioning and Partnership Manager.
Ian Collins, I supported the Martin's Law work that's on the agenda.
Charlie Periclaus, Prevent and Extremism Officer, Portsmouth City Council.
Andy Biddle, Director of Adult Social Care, Portsmouth City Council.
Colette Hill, Assistant Director of Neighbourhoods.
Okay, we're also joined by Toby from the News Today. Good afternoon, nice to see you. And we've got a deputation today on item 6, which is linked with Bearsite. And Christine, you're with us today, so welcome. We'll come to you shortly. And welcome to other members of the public that have joined us this afternoon. Nice to see you. Okay, without further ado, we move on to apologies for absence. And we have apologies from Councillor Nick Dorrington, who is on annual leave, and Councillor Darren Sanders, who is on other council business. And we've got apologies for slight lateness from Councillor Winnington, who is attending another meeting but on his way here. Members, are there any declarations of interest? None. Okay. Moving on to item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting, which took place on the 28th of October 2025. Members, are we happy that they are a true and accurate record of that meeting? So agreed. Item 4, we're going to push that back slightly because of Matt not being here. So I'm just going to move that back by one item and go on to item 5 initially. So Ian, that will be you, and it's the Martin's Law Preparedness Project Progress Update. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Leader. As described in the paper, Martin's Law took effect, received assent in 2025, and a new regulator has been set up to make sure that organisations comply with those new requirements. We have a period of 2 years to get our arrangements in place to comply with those new requirements. So the paper sets out what we did earlier this year in terms of a pilot project across culture, leisure and regulatory services to scope out what premises and events would fall into scope and what additional work was required. And since then, the expansion across Portsmouth City Council premises and events. That's worked really well. We've had positive feedback from the regulator and other stakeholders in the work that we've done. The latter section of the report outlines some of the key things we've done, like produce our scoping list, some standard security plan templates, and formation of a working group to implement and fill in some of those gaps where the new requirements come in over the next year or so, Leader. So yeah, it's an update report. There's no particular points for action. That work will continue, and we will provide further updates as more guidance is provided from the Home Office and the Security Industry Authority.
Thank you very much, Ian. Really important piece of work that needs to happen, and very important that we, because we're a city that hosts lots of events and has lots of cultural activity going on all the time, we need to make sure that we are at the forefront of this, and it's nice to see that it's recognised that we are at the forefront of this. So from me, a huge thank you to you for the outstanding work that you've done in getting us to this point. But clearly being an example that other local authorities are looking to as a good model of practice, which is extremely important. Members, any questions or comments for Ian? No. In that case, the only thing I'll add is that it is work in progress, and we'll see that develop further in future. Really important for our community groups, though, that we are understanding what is and isn't required to make sure that we're not unintentionally putting extra burdens on those who do wish to deliver events across the city, but that we are paying particular attention to the things we're doing ourselves. So are we happy to note the report? Okay, in that case, we will. Thank you very much, Ian, for being with us, and please don't feel you have to stick around for the rest of the meeting if you don't wish to. And in an extremely timely manner, racing to join us is Councillor Matthew Winnington. I will let him just get a seat and introduce himself, and then we'll move back to the previous item once he has done so. Matthew.
Hello there, and apologies. Matthew Winston, Cabinet Member for Community Wellbeing, Health and Care.
Thank you, Matthew. And over to Charlie and Andy to present on item 4 then, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. So the report submitted was a response to the Traffic, Environment and Community Safety Scrutiny Panel's recommendations regarding a review that was conducted into Portsmouth City Council's work to address its statutory responsibilities under the Prevent duty. So first I wanted to thank the panel for undertaking the review. Within the review, I provided an overview of the local authorities' Prevent responsibilities as part of the contest strategy. There is a assurance process, 8 benchmarks, and I updated the panel to indicate that we met all 8 benchmarks and we exceeded in a number of those. There were a number of recommendations in relation to the panel, and those were to construct an internal organogram developed that places Prevent at its core, clearly mapping the connections across all departments, and the diagram should visually reinforce the principle that Prevent is a safeguarding and shared responsibility and integral to everybody's role. The other recommendations were in relation to a letter to be written, drafted by myself, in relation to the reduction in resources allocated to Prevent, particularly in the context of the local government reorganisation. The third recommendation was to put young people at the heart of the Prevent strategy in terms of them being encouraged to raise awareness around how schools can contribute to local safeguarding efforts through school councils, peer initiatives and other initiatives. The last recommendation was the council to consider holding a Strong Cities network, which Portsmouth is part of, to showcase local Prevent work, and I've noted previous comments around discussing that with the Strong Cities network. So it was essentially to provide an overview of the Prevent strategy, to say that we're meeting our benchmarks as part of the Home Office assurance process, and I want to thank the panel for the very valuable recommendations as outlined in the report.
Thank you, Charlie. Andy, anything you wanted to add?
Thanks, Charlie. I mean, the report is as Charlie's relayed it, really. I think it's just a personal thanks to Charlie for the work that he does. I think when we were doing this review, or supporting the panel with this review, they were surprised to find that our team was Charlie. And I think the evidence that we've got, especially around the benchmarks and the quality of those benchmarks as assessed by the Home Office, a lot of that is down to Charlie. So it's just both thanks. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think sometimes some people think that we've got dozens of people sitting in rooms working out all this stuff, and actually we've got really dedicated individuals or small teams in lots of cases doing really important work on behalf of the council, and this is a good example. So thank you from me as well, Charlie, and I'm sure that's on behalf of the whole Cabinet. Matthew, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Charlie for the report, and indeed thanks to the text panel for doing this bit of work. I think this is quite an unsung part of the council responsibility, but it's a really important one. I have to say, when Prevent started all those years ago, I was quite sceptical because it did seem to be targeted at a particular section of the population at the time. I think there was a bit of populism behind the prevent strategy, but I think over time it's actually matured into something that is actually really important in our communities. And though obviously the responsibility, this is quite a strange one because this comes under adult social care, but the responsibility sits under council hunting and community safety in that way. So it's one of those unusual bits where a part of the adult social care directorate comes under a different area, but the reason why it comes under adult social care in all authorities is because ultimately it has that bit about safeguarding and all that kind of work, because though it's about preventing, as it says, people falling into violent extremism. Of course, a lot of the people involved who do get involved in that have other social care needs, etc., and often come from and have quite things that they need other support with. And I think the work has been done when we have these our report from Charlie on an annual basis is that violent extremism comes in many different forms, whether it be religious violence extremism, whether it be far right or far left violent extremism. It's something that we always have to be very vigilant about, and we have to be very responsible about, because it can be very easy to do things which encourage violent extremism. This is at a national and local level. I think we have to be very, very careful when we, as I say, the corporate we, in terms of the local authority, when we are engaging with communities and making sure that things are not stoked up. But this is a testament, the recommendations that we have from the text panel about the work that's being done. I'm happy to welcome the recommendations that they have and that we're working on those. And actually, I think the fact that we do see some reports, don't we, from scrutiny panels which are recommendation heavy. This is 4 recommendations. And I think that actually tells you a lot about the work that Charlie does and the work that is done in partnership, because this is a partnership thing. This goes across not just many parts of the council, but this goes across the entire city and people working together. And indeed, as it says, things like the OPCC and youth charities as well. So this really is an all-system approach, and it's really important that we support this and we make sure that people are not falling into extremism, and actually that we promote a better future in this city where we come together and do things in a way that is for everyone and not divisive or having a go at certain communities.
Thank you, Matthew. Councillor Hunt, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I've got a bit to say. First of all, I'm sure, Leader, you'll touch on it in a minute, but just wanted to thank everybody involved in the White Ribbon event today. And I've written to officers to say thank you. I've sent them an email. And I think what struck me this morning was the Lady Mayoress's words, where women would rather be hurt, this is relevant, that women would rather be hurt than be honest. And I saw that in my own life, my early years. And that is a huge barrier to get over, especially where you've got children and somewhere to live involved. So it's a massive barrier that so I just want to thank everybody who's listening and what happened this morning for all their efforts. I'd also like to, I want to get this right, so I've written it. And despite what everybody said, yes, it's prepared. You know, I've had criticism before for writing prepared speeches, but I don't really know how you do a speech without preparing something anyway. I would like to thank the text committee as set out in paragraph 2.1. It was one of those better ones which was short and sweet, which makes them more effective, I think, other than the ones that run on for months and months and months. And text concluded, as Councillor Winnington has said, that, and Charlie, Mr. Persilis has mentioned, that PCC meets all the benchmarks across our 8 targets. Councillor Winnington's right, you know. Everybody thinks we've got loads and loads of officers running about doing stuff, but we haven't. What we have got is in this council is dedicated officers who've been around for a very long time, because I think they like what we do here and they like the sense of achievement that we get in this council. Whether that will continue to go on after local government reorganisation, I just don't know, and I suspect not. So, just to touch on the recommendations, well, first of all, I want to thank all our officers who work so hard all over our local communities and groups to help us live in a city of peace, or a city that is at peace, largely at peace with itself. On recommendation 1 from the text recommendations, as Councillor Winnington has said, that prevent is a shared responsibility, but not just across the council, but across a lot of services and partners across our communities. And that by working together, we are able to overcome adversity. And I'll touch on that a little bit in a minute. So I'm bound to agree that the funding must be kept up in recommendation 2 and improved if this government is serious about preventing radicalisation on all sides within our city. But we will have to wait and see what the budget says about that. On recommendation 3, we continue as an administration to support Portsmouth Youth Cabinet and all their good work. And through schools and our other cabinet members, we have an integrated approach across services in partnership and to maintain the peaceful and inclusive city we are building and have built and continue to enjoy. I'd like to say thank the officers. I've done all right already, but funding is important. Charlie is Mr. Persilis is absolutely key to what we do, and he is trusted. He's a trusted officer right across all of the communities, and he is a precious resource as we move forward. So it is right and it is important that we stand up against all those on all sides that spread misinformation and hate across our great city. Those individuals that stand outside our community centres and in public spaces and spread their hatred online serve no purpose, none whatsoever. They are a minority group of hate that cause violence and hatred. That is their aim. This city does not need them. Now to attack the free press when they claim the very freedoms to express their views, this is alien to the British way of life and to British values. It is what we as a city must stand up to. For decades, Portsmouth has grown into a place we all love and want to look after. A place where all our families can grow and go to work and live in peace. The work of the Prevent team, including the senior officers that manage Charlie, supports this. Very lastly, Leader, and I know you share these views, and we all do here, that those people who gather outside to disrupt our community centres and the Royal Beach Hotel, and as I say, our community centre and other places, do nothing except frighten people inside and frighten people going to them. The other thing that they do is that they divert precious council resources and precious police resources away from detecting and preventing crime and antisocial behaviour across our city. The Office of the Police Crime Commissioner has already mentioned this, that the cost of these protests, which I agree are part of the freedoms that we enjoy in this country, are wasting a vast amount of money. I would add that those politicians that give comfort and succour to all of these things, who support those who go about in a thuggish way, frightening people outside our community centres and all the other places, must be defeated. We have a big task ahead of us in this council, and a task that we, at least in this room, are definitely up for. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Lee. Members, any other questions or comments? No? Okay. In which case, what we have before us is are two recommendations. The first one is that we thank the panel for its work in undertaking the review, and we're happy to do that. And also that we note and consider recommendations as set out in section 4 of the report. Okay. In that case, I'm going to... Charlie, I've heard your name mispronounced so many times today. Andy Biddle and Charlie Periclaus, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. Okay, we now move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is the proposed link with Birzeit in Palestine. Before Claire Looney presents, we have a deputation from Christine, I believe.
Hopefully that's on, yeah? Okay. So it was actually 2 years ago next month that I first came and spoke to, I think most of you, when you voted for a ceasefire, and you also voted to look at the possibility of twinning with a Palestinian city. Since then, I've been to 3 meetings, I think, of the Twinning Advisory Group. And having attended those meetings, I know that Portsmouth is twinned with a lot of towns and cities around the world. And those towns and cities are all different sizes. There are some big cities, the same size as Portsmouth. There are some small towns. And also I know that there's a variety of reasons why you have twinned, or we have twinned, because we're from Portsmouth as well. There's economic reasons why maybe you've twinned with places. There's also links to cultural groups within the city, people who live here and have links abroad. And you've also, in the past, linked with places purely for solidarity and friendship. And I know from the discussion at that time that the vote on twinning with a city in Palestine, say Portsmouth, Palestine, was that last one, solidarity and friendship. And as we know, that's really important at the moment. It's important for the people of Palestine. A lot of our media just see them as numbers. We hear, you know, the numbers of people killed. We hear the numbers of people who olive groves have been burnt and ruined. We know the numbers of the people who've been terrorized out of their houses by the settlers. But as the Palestinian people will say, we are not numbers. And by twinning and joining, We get to know people as human beings. We know them as, you know, about their family members. They've got hopes, they've got businesses, etc. And Lynn, who's sitting next to me, and myself, we've been now to 2 conferences. We did it this year and last year, of the UK, Palestine, Britain, Palestine, Friendship and Twinning Network. And there we heard of great groupings. So we heard, for example, we talked to people from Dundee. They've been twinned with Nablus for over 20 years. And we know that the fire service, the firemen in Dundee have made great links and friendships with the people in Nablus. We talked to people from Oxford who are twinned with Ramallah. There were people from the Pitt Rivers Museum, and they talked about all the cultural links. Bradford upon Avon, there are some of their football teams supporting a girls' football team in Tubas, where they are joined. And they videoed, we had Zoom meetings with people from Palestine, and they've obviously made really good connections. So it's a two-way street, you know, it's good for the people of Palestine, particularly at the moment, but it's also been good for the people in the cities here. So, why Bezaid today? You're voting on this one. I know that you've got a very detailed paper given to you already, setting out some reasons, but I just want to pick out that it is also, Bezaid, we were recommended Bezaid because it's a small town, but it really punches above its weight. It's got a big university, which is well known around the world. They've done work in the past with Yale. They've got links with Imperial. We've got people, I know one woman in this city who went out there to do a master's. We've got people here who belong to the Facebook British Friends of Bezaid University. And from a meeting we've had at the university, we know that they are keen to develop links with Bezaid University if they possibly can. It'll say on your paper, the Palestine Museum, which is a state-of-the-art modern museum, is in Bezaid. There was a big exhibition this year in Paris of Palestinian artifacts, which got worldwide attention. Wouldn't it be great if our museum here in Portsmouth could somehow link into that? That would bring people into the city. Bezaid is traditionally a Christian town, and I know we've already made links with some of the Anglican clergy in Bezaid. There's also Catholic Church there and Orthodox churches. So I know that there are congregations here that would like to make links there and set up some things that they can be involved in together. So lots of reasons why hopefully we can link with Bezaid. I would also just like to say to you that in this city, I know there is a lot of support for Palestine and Palestinians. For about 8 years now, I've been a volunteer with the Help Palestine Community Cooperative Stall. We have a stall once a month at the Love Southsea Market in Palmerston Road. And this last couple of years, more and more, we have been taking so much money. We can't take charity. People keep trying to give us money. We can't do that. But we have just sold so much. It's quite hard for us sometimes to get things. But even people who haven't got much money are coming up and just buying a small bag of dates or, you know, a small bottle of olive oil. And they say, I just want to buy something, I want to support. We've been to films here in the city. Quite a few Palestinian films have been put on. There is a lot of support of people in this city. The last thing I'm just going to say, I know over this city, we've seen lots of St. George's flags flying. That's a good thing. St. George, as we know, patron saint of England, patron saint of Palestine. And I'm sure in Bezaid, at certain times of the year, they're going to have the St. George's flag flying as well, because it's traditionally a Christian city. So we've got lots in common, and hopefully you'll agree to twin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. Claire, over to you to present.
Councillor Pitt, thank you very much. As members will see from the summary in this paper, we have responded and done the further research as requested by the full council in December 2023, when officers were required to go away and explore whether there was a way in which we could make a link with a Palestinian space, a town or a city, in order to find some balance between the existing link we already have with Haifa in Israel. Officers looked at a number of different places. We looked at different places that had different size communities, which were more equitable with that of Portsmouth's population. But in many instances, they either already had links with the UK or they were in geographically very sensitive locations where we knew communications would be extremely challenging. As a result of this, we took specialist advice and worked with the British Palestine Friendship and Twinning Network, as Christine has already referenced. They were extremely helpful in giving us some indication of the nature and types of cities that might be interested in having a further link with the UK. We then went back with them with our requirements. We wanted it to be a university city. We wanted it to be active culturally and ideally have some Christian emphasis as well as other faiths represented. Berzayet was suggested to us. It is unusual in being a predominantly Christian town within the West Bank. It is a very old town. It has a number of elements which are prehistoric as well as early era, and it leads all the way up to artefacts and memorabilia to do with the Ottoman Empire. It has a checkered history, it would be fair to say, but it does also have several fortifications and castles, which are of very equivalent dates to Southsea Castle, for example. So there's some really interesting, unexpected links. As Christine has referenced, the university is an outstanding national University of Palestine. It regularly houses UNESCO-type collections and promotes the culture and education of the Palestine area. We have reached out through the Friendship and Twinning Network, and we understand that the municipality of Berzayet and the university and the museum would definitely be interested in a friendship link. Understandably, they're cautious. We had hoped to have a discussion, a face-to-face discussion, with a member of Father Diab, a member of the St. Peter's Anglican Church of Berzayet, earlier this autumn, but unfortunately he was unable to travel. And we know that communications can still be very tense, and at times Zoom calls can be difficult. But you'll understand from the way in which we had to change the nature of our twinning and sister city relationships through the pandemic, we've become far more agile at making sure activities can happen online for all ages and all people. This paper outlines a recommendation for you to consider a very gentle friendship link, I think probably how I'd describe it, with Berzayet, and a formal approach from us to them to see if they would wish to take this on. I'm very happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Members, Chris.
Thank you, Leader. As Cabinet Member for Central Services, I also chair the Cross-Party Twinning Advisory Group, and I'm grateful for colleagues on that committee for their contributions during what has been a protracted process, as Christine said, over 2 years. Some thank yous from me. Thank you to officers for getting us to this point. It's not been easy for reasons that are set out in the report, but thank you for their hard work. Thank you to Christine and other local residents, two of whom are here this afternoon with us, who've come together to support the idea of this link with Berzayet in the West Bank. We should highlight this is a town in the West Bank of Palestine. And they're very keen to form a formal friendship group which will enable our residents to become involved and learn more about the town and explore opportunities between our respective communities to discover mutual interests and share learning of each other's culture. I would also like to mention the Archdeacon of Portsmouth's support for this friendship link with, as we've said, the predominantly Christian community of Berzayet. And I know the Bishop of Portsmouth, Bishop Jonathan, has been following this proposal and is keen to further understand opportunities that may exist between the Diocese of Portsmouth and Jerusalem. And thank you to the University of Portsmouth, who met with us earlier in the summer for their interest in being part of this discussion. So lots of interest from our side. I also know the municipality of Berzayet, I think, are open to this conversation. Should we agree the report. So I trust we're all in support of the report, which speaks to the power of, of twinning arrangements, partnerships that reach beyond borders and politics to build genuine human understanding and hope. I believe these human scale connections matter more than ever, and that through this proposal to develop a friendship link, we are, as this city did in 1948, when conversations began with Duisburg, to bring our peoples together, to learn from each other, share experiences and challenge assumptions, continuing to reaffirm Portsmouth's commitment to dialogue and cooperation. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Chris. Anyone else want to come in? Matthew?
Thank you, and thank you for the deputation. There was one thing you missed out, though. Very important thing. It's the brewery. Bezight Brewery, and it would be remiss of me not to say, as I'm on the committee of the Portsmouth and South East Hampshire Canberra branch, and also I've recently become a brewery liaison officer for the branch. So I think I would love to be the brewery liaison officer for the Bezight Brewery. Should I get invited over? But I think it is as has been said, a small town that punches above its weight. It has lots of really good links that have already been established and has been mentioned with the churches, about lots of potential to do more. You get breweries these days love to do collaborations, and we have a thriving craft brewery sector in our own city. And then, of course, there's the economic opportunities as well, and of course, that educational opportunities with the universities as well. So I think there's it's a really good thing. It's something that I think helps in terms of the whole region. We have this extremely long-standing link with Haifa. I was many years ago when I was first on the council. I was on the when we used to have individual twinning groups. I used to be on the twinning committee with Haifa, and we had some really good links there, which of course itself is a very multicultural Israeli city, and just having this as well in terms of us having a friendship with both the Israeli city and a Palestinian town, I think is a really, that's a message of peace, reconciliation, etc. as well. And I think that's something that we should be proud of doing, and I fully back obviously us pursuing this and look forward to having many links over many years with Bezight and beer.
Hugh.
I find that many years ago I was and visited Bezight. So I know a little, but it's a very long time ago. I think the question which we need to ask is this an appropriate twinning? And I would suggest that it is, despite the very small population size of Bezight, for two reasons. One, its economy. My colleague has mentioned the importance of the brewery, but I would stress the importance of the university, which, if you look at it, is one of those universities which has got specialisms which are internationally recognized. This is not a small, unimportant university. This is a university which has international links. And so we have a university which has specialisms which have international links and international recognition. So there is a match there. But perhaps the most important match is given the current state of the Middle East, is the similarity in many ways between the population of Bezight and the population of Haifa, so-called Red Haifa. Haifa has a very mixed population. I remember once being at a dinner in Haifa where the prayer before the meal was given by 4 different religions. Not just 4 aspects of one religion, but 4 different religions. And here we have in Bezight, in Palestine, one of the most diverse communities in the whole of Palestine, it is appropriate. This is the most appropriate place we could find to make a link with, and so I think this should certainly be supported.
Thank you, Hugh. Members, anyone else wish to come in? No. Okay. Claire, just a question from me. In terms of budget for these sorts of things, people are always interested, and some people say that the council's spending vast amounts of money on these things. Could you give us a bit of detail, please?
As the report outlines, there is no direct budget provision for twinning of any nature of type. What we do is either try and source external funding, apply for grant funding, or if necessary, look within existing budgets, but we try to do that as a last resort. In most instances, we try and secure external money or sponsorship from grants to enable twinning activities to occur.
Okay, thank you. Good contributions from everybody, and thank you very much indeed to Christine for the deputation. I think that there are some exciting things to explore with this particular sister city arrangement, or friendship arrangement as it is initially, and those opportunities will grow and develop over time. I mean, as was being quite rightly pointed out, we did learn during COVID that it's not necessary to put all the time put people on planes and send them halfway across the world. We've learnt that particularly with our relationship with the Canadian city of Halifax, Nova Scotia, where we have regular online conference updates, and we already know that there are business partnerships being formed as a result of that. Christy, do you want to come back in?
Last week I joined a community group in Valletta, which is our most recent twinning arrangement, and of course technology allows these things to happen. And what's fascinating was, as it emerged in this kind of online meeting, quite how much we had in common. And it was really quite a beautiful moment. So the technology enables us to do things that we couldn't have imagined a little while ago.
And the other thing, of course, is if we are particularly passionate about these things, then we can do it ourselves. So I'm going to Valletta next year to pay them a visit. I hope to drop in and see the mayor while I'm there, and that'll all be covered at my own expense. No cost to Portsmouth City Council. So we can be friendly with other places without it having to cost the public anything at all. Members, are we happy with the recommendation that officers be authorised to enable the City of Portsmouth to enter into this relationship with a view to becoming a formal friendship agreement over time? Yes. We are so agreed. Thank you very much, and thanks ever so much for coming in to give a deputation today. Really much appreciated. Okay, we now move on to item 7 on the agenda, and Kelly's going to give us an update on the centenary of the city status, because we are Portsmouth 100 next year. I'm aware that things have moved on since the report was written, so there may be some updates. Kelly.
Thank you, Leader. So the report obviously is taken as read, but just by a brief update. Section 2 sets out a bit of the background to the programme of activity planned for 2026 to celebrate the centenary of the city receiving that status. It's probably worth saying that Stoke-on-Trent have been celebrating their centenaries year in 2025, and we'll share 2026 with Salford as well, as part of a little group that received that status at the same time. The paper sets out details of the programme, which we have been describing, I think, as for everyone but by everyone as well. So I think it's really important to recognise that there are some events in that programme that will be mounted by PCC, but also a number being mounted by partners across the city, who I think it's fair to say have embraced the themes and content with huge enthusiasm and offered an enormous amount of support to the programme. The draft programme is attached to Appendix 1. As Councillor Pitt alluded to, it is constantly developing and building. So while it was correct at the time of issue, I do know there are already some really good ideas that have been floated with us since that. And what we've got is the website that keeps that live and updated as new things develop on there. So in summary, I think it's probably just a really nice opportunity as a centenary to kind of shine a spotlight on the heritage of the city, the communities, the cultures, the opportunities that the city offers, and to bring that together under a single banner that we can celebrate it all together. So I think that's all I'd say. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Kelly, and thank you for the huge amount of work that you've put in leading this piece of work. It's hardly BAU for you, but you've stepped into the space with aplomb, and we know that you are particularly passionate about the Portsmouth Rose that we will have towards the conclusion of next year's events. But even since the papers were published, members, at the bottom of page 7, you'll see October 2026 City Museum exhibition. Museum Service have secured £250,000 from the National Lottery Heritage Fund for that exhibition that we now know is coming here. So it's fantastic that the money that's being leveraged from the investment that's being put in is growing all of the time. And as Kelly says, literally every day or so we get another idea pop in the inbox, and lots of people are... The important thing to note about this is that people are doing this themselves. We're helping them where they need a little bit of support and a bit of advice, but people are enthusiastic and wanting to do these things. And the community grants fund pot around this will launch very shortly, which will give our community groups the opportunity to apply for funding to do this their way. Thanks very much to Councillor Atwell for the input from him this year in repurposing the community inclusion grants for this purpose to enable our communities to celebrate. So lots of good stuff in there. Lee, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, no doubt. And I think you and I were talking about this yesterday, weren't we, and how all the other groups and businesses in the city are going to join in with this. I mean, you've sown it into the life of the city for all next year. So people like Victorious and all these other things, they will be linking into this and promoting Portsmouth. And bidding for a city of culture, which I've heard about recently, is one thing. But, we know we are a city of culture. And I think, as the lady said over there just now, that we punch above our weight. Well, we are becoming a heavyweight, in culture, and we shall have to see what comes of that push by our MP. But we know we are a city of culture already. We do so much. An enormous amount is happening. And, it's like herding cats. You can't get your hands on it because there's so much going on all of the time. The Portsmouth buzz, as I call it, the Portsmouth buzz is going on week in and week out. Doesn't matter if it's winter, autumn, summer. It's just it's enormously wonderful. And over the last 30 years, the city has changed so much. It's quite incredible when you look back and see how the city was post-war to, which wasn't 30 years ago, but it's post-war, and how it started to evolve around about 30 years. And the catalyst for it, and this is absolutely true, was the regeneration of Gunwharf. And that really is where it all started. And back in those days, and poor old Leo Madden got in the neck from a whole bunch of people over the tower, and including us, but he did a very good job of it, and now we see the benefits of it, which have rippled, well, more than rippled out, have gone right across the city. And what you say is absolutely true, is this administration's approach is grassroots, is by enabling grassroots people to get hold of these big events and include them in it. It's not top down, but getting them to work it for us. And that's why so many people get involved. That's why you have so many volunteers doing so much work across our city. And the value of that work is just ginormous if it could be added up. It's an impossible task, but we're going to see it in evidence again all across the upcoming year.
Thank you, Lee. Anyone else? Kimberly?
Thank you. So, as Steve and others have mentioned, there's loads and loads of events coming, and there'll be even more. Like Steve said, there's stuff coming through out of the woodwork every opportunity. I've been lucky enough that my officers have been able to get involved and have taken some suggestions. So we had the Green Partnership event last week, which Kelly kindly came along and spoke about these, what sort of my area will be looking at. So I thought it was really good to say, you know, there's lots of different events going on, but portfolios are doing different things across the board. So I thought it would be a really good opportunity to be able to tell people who are listening a bit more about it. So we'll continue next year delivering the SUDS work, which was mentioned at the last Cabinet. So that's working in partnership with schools, academies, DEFRA and Southern Water to protect our environment. Our climate is changing. We need to make sure that our city is fit for the future and for future generations as well. So it's really important that we continue that work and make it clear during the centenary events. The leaders mentioned, and it's in the report, the Pride in Portsmouth Art and Sculpture Trail. It's taking part across the city. I can't wait to go and see it. It means a lot more people will be visiting our open spaces, and our residents can visit new areas, perhaps enjoy nature as they go. We know that access to green corridors and green spaces is excellent for mental health, both physical and mental health. So please also look out for the launch of our 100 Habitats campaign that's coming. It means that community groups and residents can get involved doing their own projects as well. We'll continue working with young people to see how they see the future of the city, to enable them to have their voices heard and see how they want to work with local nature going forward, which is an excellent opportunity because, as I said before at one of the last council meetings, it's really important we listen to them. They're the future generation. We're continuing to build on our resilient treescape. Really pleased to be able to announce that with support from Hilliers, there will be an opportunity for residents to purchase and plant trees. As a council, we continue to do a lot of planting on our own council land. There's a huge opportunity to increase our tree canopy cover by supporting residents to do it in their own private residential spaces. So we're hoping that we can do something with our residents to enable them to do that and help us increase that tree canopy cover. Also, I think it's really important to say, ever since I've been Cabinet member, I have had people ask me, when are you bringing back Portsmouth in Bloom? Well, everyone, you'll be so pleased to hear, we will have a Portsmouth in Bloom, but a much more modern version that will focus on biodiversity and also managing and caring for those plants afterwards as well. It's something that people really love. It's great to see, and it's great to just see that colour and vibrant plants across the city, and you know, it's something that we can all focus on. It's something really nice that we can all come together. So there's lots of things going on, and that's just a few of the things going on that have sort of come from my portfolio area, but with support from other officers across the council and also organisations, the whole Team Portsmouth. We always say Team Portsmouth, so it is a big Team Portsmouth effort. I'm really excited about next year, about all the different events going forward. There'll be even more coming forward, and it's a great opportunity for residents to get involved. And it's something Kelly said, which I made a note in my notebook and on my phone last week. This programme that's going forward, it's a programme for everyone, and it's a programme by everyone as well. So it's a real collaborative, inclusive effort across the city. If you have ideas, let us know, and we'll have a look into it.
Cool. And a quick plug for the Lions. If people want to see what they're going to look like, it's currently in Southsea Library until, Kelly?
Literally, I think it might be its last day in Southsea Library today. It's then going to Portsmouth Cathedral for the Christmas period, so anyone can go and see it there. And then working on a programme of other locations. Our colleagues at the King George V Football Complex have agreed to host it for a little while. It looks like Port Solent are keen to do so as well, and also Aspects Portsmouth, who will be a partner for us, will have that a period over February, so there'll be lots of opportunities to see that in the coming months.
Cool, but just the first of many Lions, of course. So thank you very much, Hugh.
Thank you, Leader. I think one of the great characteristics of really great cities is they're continually reinventing themselves. And one of the things we're celebrating, I think, in Portsmouth 100 is the way in which Portsmouth has reinvented itself and is continually reinventing itself as time has gone on. If we look at Portsmouth today, it is so different from what it was 30 years ago, let alone 100 years ago. The advanced manufacturing we have here in our city, the cultural life of our city. But as an economist, I especially think of the advanced manufacturing in this city. And I think we should be using, and I hope we are using, this Portsmouth 100 festival for next year, not just as a celebration of the past, but as a springboard for the future, so that this city can go on growing. We need a springboard. This could very well provide it. I think it's a very good opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. Completely agree. Members, are we happy just to note the update? And thank you very much to Kelly for all of the work that you've done on this, because I know it's been quite significant to date, and we're not there yet by any means. That means we now move on to item 8, which is the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority operational changes paper. Kelly, just before you introduce it, since the start of the meeting we have been joined by Councillor Madrick, who indicated he wanted to do a deputation on this item, so I'll invite him to do that now.
Thank you, Leader. Appreciate the time. I just thought, as the Council's representative for the Fire Authority, it'd be useful for me to come along and just give a little briefer note on behalf of the Fire Authority, and then separately on behalf of my own view of the Fire Authority. So first of all, I'll just pass on a note from the Fire Authority that they wanted me to mention, and that's in context to paragraph 2.8. They felt that the paragraph may overly simplify the staffing impact. They said that there will be 2 fewer crew per watch based in Cosham, but this was because of the special support vehicle that were required to crew will no longer exist. The equipment from this removed support vehicle will now be placed on a newly designed frontline fire appliance called the Heavy Rescue Pump. The firefighters crewing this new Heavy Rescue Pump will be the same number that crewed the previous fire appliance. It's just that the capabilities of the 2 separate vehicles will now be combined into one. It's important to remember that the Cosham Fire Station has 2 fire engines today and will have 2 fire engines in the future, both crewed with a minimum of 4 firefighters, as is currently the case. They also wanted me to reference the fact that if any Cabinet members would like to see the statement of the fire service in relation to the provisions or statement of operational change decision, then I'm happy to pass on the link. So that's what they wanted me to say, Leader. On my own personal note of being on authority with the hat of Portsmouth City Council on, I just wanted to highlight you in the Cabinet to the situation surrounding that. First of all, you may be aware that last year the Labour government increased the national employers insurance, and we were given insurance, I'm sure you're aware, Chris, as well, we were given assurances that we would get a portion of that returned to the Fire Authority. And when creating our budget last year, we included that reimbursement from government within our cost-saving measures. And obviously after that, we found out that we weren't getting any of that money back or all of that money back in full. So that meant that we had to kind of rejiggle the budget mid-term, which is what we did. So that obviously has an impact. What I will say, though, is that although the Fire Authority, they are right, that the Fire Authority will still have 2 engines and they will still have 4 fire officers, what I will say is 2 things. Firstly is that, in my personal opinion, I've been on the Fire Authority for 3 years now, I believe that this is probably the final cut that can be made before it really does impact service. The service, essentially, will impact people on the grounds. I think this is the last cut possible. And what I will say as well is, although, look, they're saying that there'll still be 2 fire engines, and there will. What I will make as an analogy is that if you've got a 100-kilogram box to lift and you've got 4 people lifting it, it's a lot easier to lift it with 5 than 4. So yes, although there'll be no direct impact to the requirements, it is always easier with greater hands, as we all know. And I think that that's what we've got to note as well. And it's also a staff morale thing. The final thing I will highlight to you, which is something that I think as a council we should be slightly upset with, is that I met with the Fire Brigades Union back in early August. It was a really good meeting, actually, a brilliant meeting with a guy called Mark Chapman. I don't know if anybody knows him, but really, really good meeting. And I assured him that we would defer the decision on this, or certainly from our perspective from Portsmouth City Council, we would defer the decision on this cut until we had got a fuller report. Mark Chapman and the FBU brought forward some things that weren't considered in the original report, and we felt as councillors and as representatives that it was worth re-exploring that before making a final decision. I can confirm to the Leader in the Cabinet here today that the Reform councillors, the Independent councillors, the Labour councillors and the Liberal councillors all stood together on this one and agreed to defer the decision on this on the 29th of August this year. And then the deferral was approved. Unfortunately then, just 7 days later, the Chief Fire Officer at the time used his powers under the Constitution to enact the enact the report and change its decisions anyway. So they did it without the approval of the Fire Authority. We thought that we would be coming back to a later session to be able to re-examine and either approve or decline, but they used executive powers to be able to override the authority's decision. I'm not content with that. I'm not happy with that. Unfortunately, just 10 days after that decision was made, the Chief Fire Officer left his post and a new Chief Fire Officer was implemented, so obviously her hands are completely clean from this situation. But I just wanted to highlight that because I don't think any of us in this room or any of us in full council would be happy if we decided to defer a decision, then a decision was made on our behalf without a future meeting. But thank you for your time. I just want to say that, and I'm happy if anyone has any questions and I can answer them. I am here for the remainder of this agenda item. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks very much. Kelly, anything you wanted to say?
Thank you. Very little by way of introduction. I think the report self-explanatory summarises the recent processes in Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority to present a balanced budget, highlights some specific elements that have potential relevance for Portsmouth, and sets out the exchange of correspondence between the local authority and the relevant minister in respect of those concerns. It's an information report and no decisions are required.
Thank you, Kelly. I thought that it was important that this came here, so that we know what's going on and that we've discussed it in a public meeting. I'm slightly surprised that the Fire Authority was concerned about 2.8 in the report when 2.7 in the report is literally pretty much a paraphrase of what we had explained to us by Councillor Madgwick this afternoon. It makes it very clear. So I'm slightly confused by that. But it is clear in the report in 2.7 that the 2 vehicles reduced to 1. This is an alternative use of a vehicle, and that led to 2 fewer crew per watch based at Cosham, which also reflects the update that I had from Neil Odin when he was Chief Fire Officer. If members also look at the letters that are included, I can confirm that the letter that I wrote, which is contained in Appendix 2, I think it's listed as, or it might be the second half of Appendix 1, I've lost track. But it's the one to Alex Norris MP. I ran the letter past both the Fire Authority and the Chief Fire Officer before sending it to make sure it was accurate. You'll also note in there that there is a letter of response from Alison McGovern MP, the Minister of State with responsibilities in this area, that was sent to us, dated the 20th of October. Members, I subsequently forwarded that letter to the Fire Authority officers for consideration and shared it with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Fire Authority, and I've had a briefing note back that I'd like to share with you now. I only got the briefing note back on Friday, which is why it wasn't published in with the rest of the pack, but I will include it, and then it can go on the minutes. So they noted that, and this is all in response to having seen the letter from the Minister that came back as a result of my letter, which I'd shared with them. So they noted that there were some positive points and said it's good that MHCLG have committed to continue to work closely with stakeholders to make sure the fire sector gets the needed resources. They also noted that a 3-year settlement is helpful for financial planning, although a cut in funding would not be helpful. And they further noted that having the flexibility to introduce council tax by £5 for Band D property is positive, albeit that the authority is conscious of cost of living pressures on residents. Then so there was those 3 points that they wanted to comment about, that they felt added some positivity to the outlook. However, they also sent me a very long list of points which are less optimistic. So their provisional challenges to the Minister's letter would include the following: that core spending power is not a good measure of changes in government funding because it includes council tax in the calculation. They noted that council tax went up by about £4 million in the 2025-26 calculation, and the government funding allocations within the calculation went down by about 0.6 million. They noted that the CSP may give the impression that central government support increased when it in fact decreased, that core spending power is not well understood by the public or local media, Sorry, Toby. It would lead to greater understanding to split the figure into local and national funding streams. They note that the core spending power calculation also includes the new grant for employers' national insurance contributions increases, but the amount received was less than half the estimated additional cost to the authority, which was reflected to us by Councillor Madrick earlier on. So in reality leaves a net reduction in available funds. By reducing central government funding, it means council tax must not only cover increases in operational costs, including inflation, but also has to offset the reduction in government funding and the unfunded portion of the NI rise. They note that there are consequences for the delivery of essential fire and rescue services to the community as a result. This is made worse because we don't get any allocations for capital from central government despite needing to invest in long-term capital assets essential to delivery of services. So members may be aware that there's been some comments that the Hampshire Fire Authority were carrying reserves, but those reserves are in lieu of having a capital project and are allocated against future schemes, or at least they are mainly allocated against future schemes. And we all know from when we set our own budgets that you can only use capital money to backfill a problem once. It doesn't solve ongoing revenue issues, which is why you have to shape the service to fit the budget. Even though council tax was increased by the minimum amount in 2025-26, the Fire Authority and the Hampshire Fire Service still faced a budget gap. This was covered, as I've just referred to, through a draw from reserves of 1.813 million and delivery of savings of 1.734 million. They made safe and compliant changes to deliver savings, but this has reduced resilience and limited capacity to improve. The information in the consultation on the fair funding formula suggests the funding will be cut further in the future. Finding safe and compliant ways to address any further funding reductions will be challenging, and remember, in Neil Odin's view, not actually possible, and may make some options untenable, as it would not be possible to balance risk with the level of resources available. So it's absolutely clear, having had that response from our colleagues, that the Hampshire Fire Service must have a real terms increase in the budget, or it is going to be cut further. And we have a statement from our outgoing Chief Fire Officer that said that further operational cuts would compromise the service. So we are still in a serious position. We need to monitor this very closely. I intend to respond to the Minister's letter with the bullet points that have been presented to me by the Fire Authority and see what their response is this time. But what we will not accept is this government window dressing their answer to make it look like they're being supportive of Hampshire Fire Service when actually they're cutting it. So we want transparency, please, from the government in this process. So that's that. Anna will make sure that those really helpful notes that we got back from the Fire Authority are reflected in the minutes. And as I say, I'll use those to frame a letter back to the Minister. Matthew.
Thank you. I'm just going to dwell on 2.9 because I was in Councillor Madgwick's position 10 years ago when I was, this is back in the days when we used to have 3 members of the Fire Authority. It was so it was proportional by party. There were 2 Conservatives and myself, I think that was what it was at the time, but I was the only Lib Dem on there. In the same way as happened this time, the majority party on the Fire Authority, which is the Conservatives, voted to put through the cuts and the reductions to our services in Portsmouth, and everyone else didn't. Though in this case they didn't just defer, they actually voted against. We have got a record of getting a raw deal in Portsmouth whenever they make cuts. Now, whether this is the last cut that they can make, which I think is mentioned before it gets really bad, but it does always seem that it falls on Portsmouth. It's not good enough. 10 years ago, it was basically because the then administration of the council, the Conservatives, decided not just to roll over and agree to it. We had a vote in this very chamber, and this was before before the leader was on the council. We had a vote in this very chamber, which so myself and Councillor Mason and Councillor Hunt were the three members of council. Oh, I'm not sure if Councillor Ashmore would quite come in at this point or not. And we had a vote, and they sent it to a committee. They would not take a vote. They refused to take a decision. They said we shouldn't take a decision on behalf of the council. It's outrageous, because we should just do what the Fire Authority says. So I'm pleased, obviously, this time, and thank you to Councillor Madgwick and for everyone else on that in the non-Conservative members on the authority of not backing this, because where people do back it, so in that case, Southampton actually got things turned around, because the Labour administration at that council lobbied very hard, and they got it changed, and they actually got some of their service reductions reduced. But this is an existential crisis. I mean, some people might say, oh, hang on a minute, the Isle of Wight's coming off worst on this, but just for anyone's information, 10 years ago, the Isle of Wight was its separate fire service. It's only since they've actually merged in. So when I was on the authority, it was just Hampshire and not with the Isle of Wight as well. But this is really concerning, because for all of us, the fire service is really important for two reasons. It's important for prevention of fire, prevention of deaths from things like carbon monoxide, and other bits and pieces about, you know, good living can also be about things like insulation and things like that as well, which can really come up through them doing home inspections. That home inspection side, they can bring up safety issues that are actually nothing to do with fire in terms of, but certainly to do with risk. And that's a really important start. And then, of course, it's about having the service for putting out fires, and of course dealing with things like car accidents, train accidents. Some of the most unsung things the fire service does is responding to train crashes or fatalities or road accidents and whatever. It's some of it is very, very harrowing, and the people involved. I know a colleague I used to work with in the DWP. Her husband was a fire in the fire service, and he was one of the team that had to deal with rail fatalities. And that is part of their job as well. It's really quite a harrowing business, and they do a fantastic job. But for it to be in a situation whereby the government is pretending they're funding properly, and we're getting to the point whereby, I mean, are we going to be picked on again? We're already down again. What's it? We're going to pick on Portsmouth. Is it going to be, we're going to have even further reductions? And then that becomes a safety issue. Should just remember, Hampshire's population, Hampshire Isle of Wight's population is going up and up and up. And yet our fire service is having it going down and down. It's interesting, isn't it? The government has talked an awful lot about putting money into the police and getting the numbers of police officers back up, and the last government said the same. But what do we hear about fire services? Nothing. We hear very, very little. It's all just about taking for granted. They're taking them for granted like they take local government for granted. So it's about time the government listens. This is a very concerning situation to be in, specifically for Portsmouth, because we're losing out yet again, in this case, in the same fashion as Redbridge in Southampton is. But it's just not good enough. And I'm really, really concerned that unless that A, we're being picked on again, but B, that where do we go from here? And it fills me with real worry, and really the government needs to bucket its ardours up.
Councillor Hunt.
Well, it is extraordinary. I mean, we've been fighting the cuts to our firefighters for a very long time. We seem to be doing it all the time. We had a massive campaign, the Liberal Democrat campaign, to save the various fire stations. Here we are seeing a reduction again. And this government, the Labour government, they're repeating the same mistakes as the previous government, but doing exactly the same thing. I mean, they do, and these ministers, they really do, and forgive me, I'm no minister, I'm just a lowly little councillor, they seem to be out their depth. They just really don't seem to know what they're doing. They're just carrying on from what the Conservatives were doing before. And they said there had to be change, and we've said it so often, it's being picked up nationally now. We said that, you know, we didn't know it would be this kind of change for the worse. And people are paying more when there is a cost of living crisis, and they know they've got to pay into their fire services and police services and local authority, but they are continually getting less for it. And when local government reform comes, they're going to get less still. We know that because we're going to be paying off the debts of Hampshire. And anybody supports it wants their head seen too, quite frankly. But the other thing I want to come on to is to tease out a little bit from Councillor Winnington. He's right, you know, it is Portsmouth that gets picked on, but Portsmouth shouldn't be picked on. What we do have to remember, with my community safety hat on, is that we are an island, mainly an island city, with Paulsgrove and Drayton Farm and Consham just off the island. But if there is a major incident in the centre of town, and I mean a major incident, you know, getting onto the island is difficult. There's only 3 ways on, and if you tried using the motorways, you know, every time you go on the motorway, they're all held up by an accident, you know, coming into the city, east or west or down north. I know fire engines will put their sirens on and try and get through, but they're still going to get held up. And as sure as God made little green apples, there's going to be a major incident in the city, and we're going to be relying on long ladders. As the government tells us, we've got to build ever taller. We see it all around our city, taller and taller buildings, which is fine. But the infrastructure isn't there. You know, these fire engines have got to get there, and it's not just about just about dealing with a fire. It is also major incidents. But the last reductions were sold to us on the grounds that prevention was more important. So we're going to have all these new services around preventing. So building regulations and all that sort of thing really came into it. And do you know what they're doing? They're privatising and deregulating planning. They're deregulating building services. So that, you know, people can even now self-certificate what they do in a building. So this is all crazy stuff. There's really no proper regulation. People are getting fed up with it. And it's a worry because there's going to be a major incident one day that needs to be responded to in Portsmouth. And I am concerned, as Councillor Winnington is concerned, as to how those rescue vehicles get into the city. Because we're about to build at Tipner, for example, more new tower blocks. 14,000 people have got to live in our city, but they're cutting the numbers of fire officers. They're not increasing the numbers of police officers. So as soon as one police officer comes in the front door, another police officer goes out the back door because the demand on them is so great. So it's, I don't know how in God's name we've got to this dreadful situation in this country, but it is a real problem, and government needs to really get it sorted and get on and find ways to actually address the issues that worry people. And cutting the fire service, again, is not the right thing to do. We have 2 Labour MPs here. What are they doing about it? Absolutely diddly squat. Absolutely diddly squat. Between the 2 of them, they don't do very much at all to defend Portsmouth, and people need to recognise that. It is appalling. And before that, we had Tory MPs when the Tory government, they still cut the fire service. So something's really wrong. You do wonder why we elect these people if they're not there to defend our city and defend the services that we all need.
And Councillor Hunt, just draw attention to, on page 51 of the pack, the letter that I wrote to Alex Norris. Both MPs were on copy.
Yeah.
So
They don't care.
They are fully aware.
I really don't think they care. They just want people to believe all this window dressing. I think it was you that talked about window dressing. It's all it is, window dressing. Shame on them. Shame on those two Labour MPs for allowing this. And the fire unions ought to stop funding the Labour Party.
Okay. Members, any other comments? Happy to note the report and note the fact that I will respond to the Minister's letter with the additional points raised by the Fire Authority. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. We move on then to item 9 on the agenda. Alison's joined us. Alison, if you just, before you introduce the report, just say who you are because you weren't here at the beginning. So it's Holiday Activity and Food Update.
Lovely, thank you, Chair. Alison Critchley, Head of Sufficiency and Resources in the Education Directorate. Apologies, I wasn't here at the beginning. And I am also here for Nicola Clanahan from Housing. This is very much a joint report and reflects joint work. Unfortunately, Nicola's unwell. The report is a report for information only. It reports principally on the 24-25 financial year, but includes some information more recently from 25-26. With the HAF programme, members will be familiar with it. This is a very well supported and enjoyed programme that reaches many of our most vulnerable families. Over the last year or so, we've worked really hard on a number of issues, particularly increasing attendance so that booked places are actually taken up, which we've managed to do by encouraging overbooking. We've also increased our offer for families of children with special educational needs. And we've worked in a joined-up way with the Household Support Fund, which has been really valuable because that has meant that whilst the HAF programme has to target families who are eligible for benefits-related free school meals, with HSF-funded work, we can offer an open programme which reaches, which families like to come to because there's no need to demonstrate their eligibility. And of course, there are many families who might not meet the threshold for free school meals, but actually can really benefit from the programmes on offer. We would normally at this time, we report annually, usually at this time of year. Often we have come asking members to lobby the government for continuation of the HAF programme because it's been announced 1 year at a time. We're really in a better position this year because in the summer we had confirmation that there will be a further 3 years of the programme. We're yet to hear exactly how much funding there will be, but we expect it probably to be cash limited and limited to a similar cash sum to previous years, which of course with inflation and our growing number of children who are eligible for free school meals isn't great, but better than having nothing at all. So we are grateful for that. And if I may, I would just like to particularly thank Kira White, who was the HAF lead officer for the first 3 years of her programme and had huge energy and left us earlier this year, but also Katie Edmonds, who has taken up the mantle and brought new ideas and continued to drive it forward with energy. Thank you.
Cool, thank you, Alison. I'm aware of just how much effort Kira put into it in the early days to make this work. And I'm also reminded of a national report into early HAF work that was happening across the country and how many, I think I seem to recall that Portsmouth was mentioned in it 11 times for the number of best-in-class projects that we were delivering and the way we were doing it. And that's clearly continued ever since, and that's a testament to the amazing work of that team. You were slightly more diplomatic than I'm going to be. This is a real terms cut in the funding, which is disappointing because inflation is now not quite under control. The government wants it at 2%, but it's in the bottom half of the 3%, and to the amount of benefit that you get from extending this is huge. I mean, one particular figure that struck me this time around was that 87% of parents reported increased knowledge of healthy eating and physical activity, up from 68% at Easter. That's massive. I often use that analogy of early help and intervention being so important, and that if the sink's overflowing, don't buy more buckets, turn off the tap. This is turning off the tap stuff. This is things that prevent children from entering a pathway where their outcomes are going to be negatively impacted, and all for actually a really modest sum of money. So this has got big reach and delivers real benefit to an awful lot of young people, and it tackles so many of the issues that are prevalent in our city, and helps turn around people's outcomes. So it's very, very welcome that the funding is still there for the rest of the Parliament, but slightly disappointing that it couldn't have been at least given an inflationary uplift to make sure that we could continue to deliver, given that the demand and the eligibility is increasing. So it's, but we're very, very good in this local authority of making a little go a long way, and I know that the team will just keep innovating and finding ways to still make sure that we're delivering the same fantastic programme, albeit with less resource. So, and it might mean that we have to be a bit more nimble about how we apply some funding around it in order to make that happen, because we will also be losing things like UK Share Prosperity Fund money at the end of this financial year, and that's not being backfilled either. It's an ongoing challenge as ever, and with the government rolling more and more grants up into single grants here and there, we have to keep a very, very close eye on exactly what's going on to make sure that we're not actually ending up with less resource. I'm always suspicious when things get rolled up. It's welcome to make the process more streamlined, but it can mean that in future other cuts happen as a result, and you don't notice so much because it's a tiny cut of something of a bigger number, but actually it still has a massive impact on some of the sub-sums that are within that previously were standalone grants. Welcome the report. Think it's brilliant that we've continued to be successful, and long may that be so. I know that it was Councillor Dorrington who requested this to come, and he is away on annual leave today, but I know he would want me to thank the team and wish you every success with the next year. Members, any comments or questions? Lee.
Yeah, I mean, we would have all seen that Guardian article, wouldn't we? You know, recently about how well we do around our play centres, etc. And all of this, it all integrates. You know, it's all combined and it all integrates. And it's really important too that when we look at what we do, you know, we also continue always to thank the volunteers, the Maureen Maplesdons, all these other people around our city who make, as you say, Leader, the little bit of money go so much further. And it's teamwork, isn't it? It's Team Pompey that makes all of this happen, the Pompey Buzz, all that sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, this is very welcome, isn't it? And getting kids into new youth centres. I had somebody come online from the hard right the other day, attack me when I said how well we do in the Guardian article, etc. And that person said it was all lies, and Portsmouth's been shutting its youth centres and shutting its play parks and so on. And this is the misinformation that we are all up against now in this modern world. So bringing reports like this to the Cabinet and to elsewhere for noting is important, so that more and more people understand just how well we do and how much the value is of the voluntary support, the mums and dads, as I say, the Maureen Place of Buckland and Stamshaw and Portsea Adventure Play Park. All these people integrate with what we do. So it's that network, that fabulous Pompey Buzz network, that helps us with things like this.
Thank you, Lee. Yeah, I mean, 4.8 of the report draws out the fact that the compelling case studies across seasons, the Play and Youth Service hosted open access events at adventure playgrounds and youth clubs. Easy statement to make, but of course, in order for it to be able to do that, you've got to have adventure playgrounds and youth clubs, and we do and others don't. And that's one of the reasons why we can make the money go so far, is that we're delivering it through services that we have time and time again protected and made sure we're still there for future generations, and the massive benefit that that has, because in other places a lot more of the resource will have had to go into standing up something that was able to deliver that in the first place, and we haven't had to do that here, and that's why we're flipping good at it. And it's also why we don't want local government reorganisation to march in with its size 10s and make an enormous mess of things that we've been getting right for a very, very, very long time. Okay. Anything else on this one, other than to warmly welcome the report? Thank you, Alison. Thanks for being here today, and can you pass on our thanks to the rest of the team, both in and outside Portsmouth City Council, for continued work in delivering this. Item 10, use of pesticides annual update from Colette Hill.
Okay, thank you. This report is the annual report to update the Cabinet on the Council's use of pesticides, and the report is produced on behalf of Public Health, Culture, Leisure and Regulatory Services, Housing, Neighbourhood and Building Services, and Economy, Transport and Planning and Corporate Services, so right across the board. Not much to highlight in the report, it's quite brief, but section 4.1 highlights this year's use and compares it with the previous 2 years. It reflects a business as usual approach where all teams are working to minimise the use of pesticides, and use will vary dependent on weather and previous treatments. And 4.7, it's worth noting the good progress made by Culture, Leisure and Regulatory Services, whose parks team have reduced use by 75% over the last 5 years. So whilst there's been progress, just to reassure Cabinet that all teams continue to look for alternative methods that might be a suitable treatment. That's it, really.
Thank you, Colette. Lee?
Yeah, it's something that I talked to the officers in parks about a lot. You see the massive reduction. I went around to walk the golf course, which continues to bring a nice income into the city, and all these sorts of things. But there is an issue. I mean, we saw it through the summer, which was tall weeds growing in streets. And I think that we are going to be addressing that over the winter to see if we can work on this as we get towards next spring. So that's something we definitely got and we are mindful of. I didn't want anybody to think before we leave this report that we weren't mindful of some of the complaints that we've had from residents about weeds growing in the street. The downside is people telling us, we get one group of people rightly telling us that we should leave weeds alone because they are part of the infrastructure of the environment for birds and butterflies and so on. But then we also have to look out for trip hazards in pavements in particular. So we are going to be looking at this over the winter, Leader, I think, and seeing if there's some sort of compromise that we can come up with next year. I know not everybody will be pleased about that, but we can't have people falling over, breaking their hips, ending up in hospital, and all the other things that brings with it. The cost is enormous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Lee. I mean, I think from the very beginning of this work, we've taken a pragmatic and moderate approach. We were lobbied very, very hard, particularly by our Labour colleagues in the early days, to take an absolutist approach and ban pesticides. And if we'd done that, all that would have happened is we would have had to do a U-turn, because that's what's happened in every other local authority that introduced a ban on pesticides. There was ructions, I think is a fair description for it, in Brighton. And in the Isle of Wight, I was actually there at the point when they did the U-turn, and we had vehicles literally driving all around every street in across the island that they could at speed, spraying everything in sight in order to try and catch up with it because the place was in such a mess. So they learnt that lesson too. So we didn't put ourselves in that place, and it is going to be every single year trying to make sure where the right balance is between managing the weeds, particularly through the COLAS contract on our streets, and making sure that we're getting that balance there to make sure that our pavements are safe to use and that the street scene looks smart. But in other areas where we can, particularly around our parks and open spaces and around some areas of housing, they've been particularly proficient in making the reduction. And also, as part of this, it's really important to note that although it shows the litres in concentrate form, what the teams have been doing is using more and more diluted versions of it to see where the happy compromise is, because if it's diluted more, it has less negative impact. So all that work is ongoing. I know you're a particular fan of bees, Councillor Hunt. I know you love your bees. And protecting our pollinators is a key part of making that reduction. So I think it's good progress, certainly from the baseline. We just need to keep a watching brief to make sure we're getting the balance right. But thank goodness we didn't do what some people did, because actually we would have been forced into a complete U-turn, which would have benefited nobody. Councillor Barrett, I think you wanted to come in.
Yes, you've jumped on a couple of points I was going to make, but I think it's really important to say that the work that's been going on, especially over the last couple of years, is really, really important. And you can see the last 2023, 24, 25, the records on there. But what people don't see, I think, and you'd have to go back a bit further, but I've got the numbers here because I check every year. So when you just take the parks team, for example, I know that we've said an average of 75% drop. So in 2020, parks were using 80 litres. And when you look today, what they're using, 6.79 litres, what a huge, huge drop. Absolutely massive drop. And that's what we said we would do. We said we would try and phase it out where possible. And we said we would continue to look at alternative methods wherever possible, which we have continued to do. So, as Councillor Pitt mentioned, I know Colas have been using the drip method, so it's a really diluted method. They're using different strengths to see what works and what doesn't, and in some places it has worked, some places not so much, and that's why you have seen a slight increase, because some places we didn't, or we'd greatly scaled back the amount of about spraying that we actually did, and because we haven't sprayed, we've had to go back and sort it out because it's got a bit out of control. So that's why you've seen a little bit of an increase, but you have to bear in mind that that is a whole different level. It's a greatly reduced level as well. But I think we should be really pleased to see that we're continuing on that work and seeing a vast reduction over the years, well, particularly over the last couple of years, but over the last 5 years, it's a huge reduction across all the different areas that are looking into this. And it's really important to note as well that we continue to work with other councils across the country. As Councillor Pitt also mentioned, a lot of when a couple of years ago, when we signed up to this at full council to phase it out rather than completely just chuck it out the window, because that's not feasible. It wouldn't have been feasible. We've seen places do U-turns, complaints, councils being sued because of trips and falls and breaking of bones. One council even suggested that, I don't know whether they actually did it in the end, but because it was so bad and because they didn't have the budget anymore to do it, that they were looking at giving residents gardening tools to do it themselves. So, you know, we've done the right thing, and as has been mentioned, we do have a duty to look after our residents as well, make sure the highway is clear. You know, whether you've got a pushchair, mobility issues, whether you've got issues with sight, we need to make sure those are clear, and that's our duty and our responsibility to do so. One last thing I will mention is we've continued the trials of doing different things to see what works. So some of the trials we've done, so we've treating areas of moss, we were doing some chemical treatments with that. We don't do that, we use machinery instead, so that's a good change. We have done some you might have seen across parks and various spaces, we've done no-mow areas, which worked really, really well. And I think it was glorious having a walk through some of those areas and seeing the amount of wildlife in there, and the bug life was fantastic. As I said, the drip method we've used, so diluting the amount that we use to see whether that works. We've also done a bit more. We've got to manage it. Everything. It's always a fine balancing method. So obviously we're doing what we can, but we also have to be mindful of health and safety for our workers as well. Certain machinery can cause certain issues. Bending over, hand weeding things. You've got to just balance it all out. But trialing things like soda crystals, different types of weeding technology. We're trying whatever we can, and we're open to, as it says in the report, as methods progress, we're continuing to look into trialling new methods to see what's going on. We're sharing our results as well to other councils, because this is a thing not just we're working on, but we're working in collaboration with other councils. It's been really good to work with them as well on this. So we will continue to do it, but I think we should be pleased with how we've moved forward. And we've still got work to do, but we're on the straight and narrow for this, and I think we just need to continue doing what we're doing, phasing out where possible, but being mindful that we do need to make sure we protect our residents going forward. So yeah.
Anyone else? Dave?
Although the leader and Councillor Barrow have pretty much gone through the things I was going to say on it, I think it's worth pointing out on 4.9 there, where it says, following the change to use, the teams receive low levels of complaints about weeds, indicating the teams are managing the change of method well. And I think when you mentioned about being pragmatic, I think it should really be noted that everyone, from directors, officers, the people on the streets, on the highways team, with the parks team, they've all got on board with this and they got on with it. And we're managing to do things now while reducing the pesticides / herbicides that's going on there, and we're winning it, and we're doing it in a way that's actually increasing the biodiversity. It hasn't led to us having to, like you've mentioned, other councils U-turning on it. We're doing something that's leaving a legacy and is getting better and better. So I think that's just worth noting on that.
Thank you, Dave. Kimberly?
Sorry, it'll be really quick because Darren's not here. I just thought it's in 4.8, but I think it's really important to note that we've spoken to residents about this as well, particularly around our housing land. And we've actually done, I'm just looking at Colette, we've done walk-arounds with our residents as well who live in those housing areas to sort of get a bit more of an idea, get them involved in it, and to also explain how these things are working and why we're doing what we're doing. You have to take people on a journey with you. So I think it's really important, and it's great, that the housing estate team have been doing that with the residents as well to make sure they're involved and understand the whole process going forward.
Councillor Candlish.
I'm not going to rehearse many of the arguments to be made. I think just an observation.
Could you just move your microphone in a bit closer? It's not picking up.
I'm not going to go further. All the points have been well made by everyone. Just as an observation about the whole process, it is such a good example about how a simple one-line answer is rarely the right thing. And it's a combination of many different things: good record keeping, engagement with people. It is the combination of actions that really results in a good outcome. And we should never forget that. Local government is a complicated thing to do, and I think we, in this instance, are doing it very well. The level of reduction in pesticide use that has been achieved, whilst keeping the streets in good order and finding that balance point and constantly monitoring, is something we should be proud of.
Point well made, Peter. Okay, anyone else? No, happy to note a report. Yep. Okay, that takes us to item 11, which is Treasury Management Mid-Year Review 25-26. Chris Ward, please.
Thank you, Leader. So this is, as you've introduced, Leader, this is the Treasury Management Mid-Year Review, so it's halfway through the year. I'll just give you some highlights, no updates to provide. So first and foremost, the most important thing here is that at the mid-year point, that the Council has remained within the Treasury Management Policy that was approved by Council back on the 18th of March 2025. Just some points that I'd probably highlight in the report. There's a commentary in there around both short-term and long-term interest rates. Things to note really are that in terms of long-term interest rates, so this is where the Council might be borrowing for particular projects. Long-term interest rates are forecast to drop by less than 1%, but over a 3-year period. So that's obviously quite a small percentage and quite a long period. In terms of short-term interest rates, of course, that's important for us in terms of our investments. And they're largely linked to base rates. And the expectation is that they will also fall maybe a couple of times next year. There's commentary within the report about our performance on investments, and I'll remind you, as I always do, that the important thing about investments is security first, liquidity second, and yield or performance third, after you have taken care of those two other important factors. And you'll see that our performance is generally strong in terms of investment. It's 4.66% average return versus overnight investments at 4.19%. So it beats overnight, and it's close to 12-month investment returns, which is around about 4.79. The only other thing that I think I'd comment on is our overall debt portfolio, or our borrowing portfolio, and you'll see within there that our debt interest on all of our borrowings averages out at 3.41%, which is also a positive position for the council. So it's a low level of interest that we're paying on our borrowing. And actually, if you do the comparison, you'll see that we're earning more interest in our investments than we're paying on our borrowing. Happy to take any questions, Leader, but that's all by way of an update.
Members, any comments? No? Okay, in which case we have a recommendation that we note the general fund forecast outturn for 25-26 as at 30th of September 25. Are we happy with that? That we also note that in accordance with approved policy as described in section 6, any actual overspend at year end will in the first instance be deducted from portfolio reserve balance. Is what? You did this to me last time, Mr. Ward.
I think what's happened on the agenda, it doesn't say item 12, it says it has a 1 next to it.
Oh, I see. Okay, yes, it doesn't say item 12, does it? And I did point that out in the briefing. That hasn't been corrected in the pack, so I apologise. So, back to the recommendations. Recommended that Council's Treasury Management activities remain within the Treasury Management Policy 25-26 and the period up to 30th of September 2025. That the Treasury Management indicators at 30th of September 2025 as set out in Appendix A. And 3, that the report goes to full Council on 9th of December. Is that all okay? Cool. We can now ask Chris to proceed to what's erroneously called item 1 on the agenda and looks like the next recommendation, which is actually the Revenue Budget Monitoring 25-26 second quarter to end of September 2025.
Thank you for the introduction, Leader. Yes, this is the half-year position, and again, just highlights rather than update. So you'll recall that it was only last month that we did this report. You'll recall that the quarter 1 position, we were forecasting an overall forecast overspend of 0.7 million, obviously relatively modest in comparison with the overall size of the budget. That has moved to now a forecast of, for the mid-year position, half-year position, a forecast of a £1 million overall overspend. Now, it's probably important to understand what that accommodates. So you'll appreciate that, and this is a similar story to last time round, you'll appreciate that we have somewhat described as windfall costs. They're still overspendings, but we didn't know how much they would be by, so we've catered for them within the council's contingency. The main one of those is temporary accommodation. That's running at about a potential £4 million additional cost compared to previous years. It's on its way down. I think it peaked at around about 5.7, probably about 6 months ago. So the overall forecast overspend of £1 million accommodates all of those windfall costs of about £4.5 million in total, and that's met and planned for within the council's contingency. It also accommodates all of the expenditure that has also been planned to be funded from portfolio reserves. That amounts to around about 2 million, the majority of which relates to transport items funded by the parking reserve. It also accommodates actually an overspending in children's families and education. That's about 1.8 million, largely driven by additional pressures in home to school transport and agency costs associated with social workers. But that is offset by an underspend in our treasury management activities, similar to the commentary that I've given in on the previous report, of around about £1.5 million. You take all of that together, it results in an overall net overspend forecast of £1 million. If any of those additional costs in the year, for example, the children's families and education costs, or the additional costs that you see in the report around environment, for example, if they're to continue into future years, that will obviously place a strain on our future financial position and require further savings to be made because they are unplanned. That's all, Chair. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chris. I think fair to say that although there is an overspend and we always need to live within our means, that that is significantly better position than we were in this time last year.
Yeah, this time last year we were forecasting a position well over £5 million. I think the other important thing that I neglected to mention is at a level of £1 million, that can be contained within the council's overall contingency at this stage. So I think it's important to reflect that it's a managed position at this point, but we do need to be mindful that if we're not able to contain those in future years, it will impact on council's future savings.
And could you remind us what the forecast, without further savings being made by their existing councils, admittedly, but what is the forecast deficit for a new authority that we may be part of in 2028?
You'll remember that figure better than I will, Leader. 67 million, I understand.
It certainly is, Chris, £67 million. And here we are saying that we can cover our £1 million within our contingency. You couldn't wait, could you? So, members' questions, Lee.
It's not a question. What it is we work so hard here as a team, but with officers. And when we do have these forecast overspends, we go away, we look at it, what it is needs to be done, and we try and bear down on it. I mean, if Councillor Sanders was here, he'd be telling you how him and his officers working really hard to reduce the cost of this homelessness by moving people out of where they are now into more less expensive accommodation and arguably better too. But so we do bear down on these problems. Say problem spending when it comes along, they're not problems, they're real things. And that's what we are able to do as Portsmouth City Council, because we're all really interested in what happens here. And yet one of our neighbours has allowed its spending to run out of control, and taxpayers in Portsmouth are going to have to bail that all out when it comes along, if it comes along eventually. You know, I keep hearing that maybe they'll row back on this nonsense, but with so much else going on, you know, all these changes, all these things going on in the world, and here we are, we've got Labour ministers driving through unnecessary change here in Hampshire, and I do wonder what it's all about. I don't really understand. Matt Winnington's onto it much more than myself. He really understands, gets into the technicality of it all. All I know is this, and we keep telling people out there, and we have the Lib Dems, we have a petition called Hands Off Portsmouth. It's up to over, 6,500 now, Councillor Candlish, and we would like people to go on along and sign that more and more and more. I'm phoning people up and telling them about it. Go and look at it, because it's going to impact their future. It's going to impact their bin deliveries, rubbish collections. It's going to impact their community centres. It's going to impact libraries. It's going to impact everything. If we end up with this new council ends up with a £67 million deficit, people like Chris Ward are going to tell these new councillors, whoever they are, you've got to get your spending under control. which is what we do here, and how they're going to manage that, goodness only knows. I don't think the government are going to come along and bail them all out. They may do. I think they've done it here and there everywhere in other places. But again, what is it, Leader? You don't hear diddly squat from these two Labour MPs in Portsmouth. They just got their head down and they're not talking about it. They must know what's coming. Why don't they lobby the government to tell Portsmouth to leave us alone, to tell the government to leave Portsmouth alone, and hands off Portsmouth, if you will. Councillor Winnington.
So you're literally tag teaming each other now.
Thank you, Lee. Well, how do I follow that, really? It's, I mean, it's whenever we look at this, isn't it? Every time we look at these quarterly, and this has now been going on for a year, so it's a year now, isn't it? It was last December where we were unceremoniously told that we were going to be involved in local government reorganisation. And you just look at we're in a relatively good financial state. And when I say relatively good, it's compared to just about anywhere else, we're in a really good financial state. But everything's relatively good because, quite frankly, none of it's actually particularly good because none of local government is. And we've just been talking, haven't we, about fire authorities, about the fire services not being funded properly. And that's going to start to have a safety risk. We see local authorities around the country where you get to the point where they haven't got the money that they need and they have to start making cuts to areas that they really shouldn't be, whether you start running a statutory service at the bare minimum. And then we look at, but again, we come back to our statement that we've got, our financial return for the half year. We're in a good state. We're in a better state. We were having this conversation, weren't we, previously? In a better state than we were this time last year. And yet, if we're forced into an authority with £33 million, I think it's 33, isn't it? £33 million around that worth of deficit the moment we start.
67.
I thought it was 33 just for us.
67.
Oh, it's now 67. Oh, okay, so it's been revised again. I'll go with that because, this all goes, but again, this is a nonsense, isn't it? The county council had a thing that said they were £200 million worth of deficit, and then they went all the way down to 98, and now it's back up. So that's why we are where we are. So it's something where you can't trust them, and you can't trust that in terms of where we are. So we just go on, and the government just doesn't listen, and it doesn't listen. And I was having a conversation with Councillor Sanders about this, actually. Unfortunately, he's as I'm sure the leader said, he's away in London this afternoon at a housing conference, and we were talking about what he's getting the vibes from local government Labour. Now, of course, local government Labour is being affected by this as well, and they're caught between two stools because you've got some very loud voices saying, oh, we've spent all this money on local government reorganisation, you just have to go ahead and do it now. But they're people who, quite frankly, they're going to stay elected no matter what happens. And then you've got other local government Labour going, hang on a minute, in these new authorities, we're not going to run any of them, we're going to lose all our seats. And yet they still go on, even though, and of course, then there's the money. So we go on and we do all this work for decades in this city. We do all this work. We have Chris and his team. Chris has been here for absolutely years. All of the work that he's done, his team's done, working with all the people around the council to get it done. Yeah, all the people on in all the cabinets, all the parties get this done. And what's it going to end up with? Shoved in with a new authority. We have no money. We have to cut services. So hands on Portsmouth. Just do it. Just stop the nonsense. It's never too late to say this is ridiculous. go back and think again, government, because you're going to end up with no Labour councillors anywhere, and you're going to end up with bankrupting all of local government.
Thank you, Councillor Winnington. Moving to the recommendations, can we, number one, please note the general fund forecast outflow term for 2025-26 as at 30th September 2025? Yes. Can we also note that in accordance with the approved policy as described in section 6, any actual overspend at year end will in the first instance be deducted from any portfolio reserve balance and once depleted then be deducted from the 26-27 cash limit? And 3, agree that directors in consultation with the appropriate cabinet member consider options that seek to minimise any forecast overspending presently being reported and prepare strategies outlining how any consequent reduction to the 26-27 portfolio cash limit will be managed to avoid further overspending during 2026-27. Okay, also noted, which brings us to exactly 4 o'clock and the end of today's meeting. Thank you very much.